We need to stop talking about the Chicago Bears running back room like it's the worst backfield in the NFL. They're not.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1, and you can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. On the show today, I want to look at how this Bears backfield actually compares to other running back groups in the NFL. Because I feel like Bears fans spent so much time this offseason looking at free agent running backs and then running backs in the draft and now trade targets at running back. And all it does is pile on this Bears backfield as though somehow DeAndre Swift, Roschon Johnson, and now Kyle Monangai are the worst backfield in the NFL, and the Bears can't possibly have rushing success with the backs that they have under contract now, and they have to do something, right? Well, no, they don't. This is a good enough running back room. Not a great running back room. No one's putting them in the top 10, or dare I say even top 15. But like, this is a group that Ben Johnson and this Chicago Bears offense can be very successful with. And so I want to look at how they actually stack up and what kind of the range of outcomes could be for this Bears backfield as it currently stands right now. One of the impetuses for this for me was that PFF is doing their ranking of every team's different position groups across the NFL. And notably, as they went through the running backs, the Bears were not in last place. And I think that's like something to note here, right? It's not just people in and around Chicago saying, hey, the Bears backfield isn't the worst, but certainly no one's trying to defend it as being good or great. I just think we've kind of gone overboard on the criticism of this backfield to the point where like I find myself having to somehow defend DeAndre Swift, even though I'm not that big on DeAndre Swift. I don't think he's a particularly great running back, but like the Bears are doing fine in the backfield. When PFF went through their running back room rankings, they had the Chicago Bears 30th out of the 32 teams. And the analysis there from one of their analysts was, quote, if there's a remaining weakness for Chicago's offense after a stellar offseason, it's their running back unit. DeAndre Swift averaged just 3.8 yards per carry last season while earning a 65.7 PFF rushing grade. Roschon Johnson garnered a 76.0 PFF rushing grade, but he's only tallied 136 carries through 2 NFL seasons. The Bears also didn't draft a running back until the 7th round, picking up Rutgers' Kyle Monangai. So they had 2 different backfields worse than the Bears, and we'll get into some of the other teams comparatively here, but like it's worth noting on the front end that just like, hey, this is not the worst backfield in the NFL, and that other outside organizations don't see them as the worst backfield in the NFL, because as much as we complained about the Bears' lack of running game at times last season and wanting more from DeAndre Swift and how he felt like he underachieved, and certainly Roschon Johnson had 150 yards, right? It felt like less than what the Bears needed from their running backs. They still weren't even the worst running group last year, right? And part of the criticism is that they didn't add anything, but even if they brought back they produced at the exact same level. Like the Bears as an offense were 25th in rushing yards last season. This was not 32nd. Again, not saying that they're top 10, but this is not the worst unit in football. Even DeAndre Swift, if you want to just say starter, how he stacks up to other running back starters. Like DeAndre Swift was 18th in rushing yards last season. DeAndre Swift had more rushing yards last season than a lot of the running backs that Chicago Bears fans have been fantasizing about the team acquiring this offseason. I mean, he only had 50 fewer rushing yards than James Cook of the Buffalo Bills, who's kind of the pie in the sky trade candidate. But DeAndre Swift had more rushing yards than J.K. Dobbins who was a free agent from the Chargers that a lot of Bears fans wanted to see them sign before he went to the Broncos just a couple of weeks ago. DeAndre Swift had more rushing yards than Breece Hall of the New York Jets, who Chicago Bears fans have been kind of speculating and going through trades on what it might be able to take to get him out of the Jets backfield in Chicago. He had more rushing yards than another trade candidate like Kenneth Walker, although Kenneth Walker was injured, only played in 11 games, so it's not as fair of a one-to-one comparison there. But like, again, top 20 in rushing, more rushing yards than Alvin Kamara of the Saints, more rushing yards than Devon Achane of the Miami Dolphins, more rushing yards than Ramondre Stevenson of the Patriots or Brian Robinson of the Commanders. Like, this was not the worst starting running back in the NFL last year when we felt like he was having a down year and underperforming based on expectations for DeAndre Swift. So, of course, we expected, like, almost no matter who the Bears coach was or what differences were going to be this year, that DeAndre Swift we were expecting him to have a better 2025 season, regardless of everything else the Bears have done this offseason to help him and the rest of the offense be better. But even if he was exactly the same last year, was 18th leading rusher in football. And I get that we all want better. We all should want better. And I'm not here to say that like an upgrade wouldn't have been beneficial for this Bears team, but I'm just trying to kind of bring us back from the overboard analysis of like, oh, this backfield is going to be so bad and the Bears are not going to be able to run the ball much at all, and they're just going to be struggling to be a well-balanced offense because Ben Johnson wants to run the ball, and how are they going to run the ball with these running backs back there? Like, and that was without getting much production at all from Roschon Johnson. I mentioned the 150 yards. Like, we're all expecting Roschon Johnson to be able to do a bit more this season. He had 350 yards as a rookie, right? His first season. Like, we know he is capable of more and absolutely can do more. And then you add in Kyle Monangai as a 7th-round rookie, who, yes, it's a 7th-round pick, so how high can the expectations be? But like we talked on this podcast multiple times now about how I think Kyle Monangai is primed to be a real contributor here and someone who makes some noise in this Bears backfield, someone who can help out right away and not just be a special teams player, not be a healthy scratch, not be a practice squad guy, but someone who's getting meaningful snaps in games and in the rotation. So to me, this feels like a little bit of a like Bears echo chamber kind of thing where it's like, if you're a Bears fan on Bears social media and Bears Facebook groups and Bears Twitter circles and Bears Reddit threads or whatever, right? You're so, you end up getting only Bears stuff, which of course, if you're a Bears fan, that's going to be what you seek out. But then you don't get as much context with what other backfields look like and how you might be down on what the Bears have, but compared to other running back rooms, like you don't have to feel like this is the worst group in the league, and that you can feel like, I mean, you could put a good handful plus below the Bears here. I think there's, 4 or 5 running back rooms that I feel pretty strongly are like, yeah, these guys probably won't be better than the Bears. And there's another 4 or 5 that I think could be worse than the Bears, to the point where you could start sniffing maybe even the top 20 on the higher end of the spectrum here for Chicago. So I want to compare this Bears backfield to some other running back rooms around the NFL next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. And FanDuel is the best way to get in on all of your favorite sports action all summer long. The MLB season is heating up, and every game brings clutch hits, standout pitching, and unforgettable moments. So from walk-off homers to no-hitters in the making, there's no shortage of drama on the diamond, and no better time to get in on the action with FanDuel. You've also got the upcoming NFL season you can bet ahead on: Bears, Vikings in week 1, Ben Johnson's Coach of the Year odds, Caleb Williams' passing yards, and so much more, all in the FanDuel app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. How could a $200 bonus in bets add to the excitement if your first $5 bet hits? Because now is the perfect time to sign up if you're new to FanDuel. Head to FanDuel.com, place that first $5 bet, and if it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets added on to the winnings from your $5 bet. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the MLB, NBA, and NFL. So yes, the Bears' backfield has some weaknesses, and it may be certainly the biggest weakness on offense, and a spot that In an ideal world, would you like to upgrade? Yes, but we've talked before on this podcast that I don't think the Bears are planning any kind of major moves in the backfield because I think it's a group that can be good enough and that can be better than a lot of other running back rooms, or not a lot, but can be better than other running back rooms around the NFL that makes you feel like, okay, this group can absolutely get by. Because you look at some other teams and a good handful of other NFL rosters have running backs who don't, or I should say they don't have a running back who has been as productive as DeAndre Swift. You've got a few backfields that are relying heavily on rookies, which can work out great. We've seen plenty of rookie running backs come in and have success early in their careers. And then you've also seen sometimes it takes rookies a little longer to really break out and emerge. And if your plan A and B are rookies, there's a volatility there of like you're not sure exactly what you're going to get right away out of the gate. And that's what makes it a tricky thing to predict, but why it makes me feel better about this Bears running back room that plenty of other teams, including like pretty good contending playoff caliber teams in this conversation as well, don't have spectacular backfields. I mean, heck, the Kansas City Chiefs have gone a long time without having a great backfield. I think Pacheco and Kareem Hunt have emerged now, but there was a while there where they were kind of just moving running backs around and still being able to find success when you have the best quarterback in football and best coaching staff in football, of course. But the point being, like, running backs don't have to be make or break for your team. But when I look at some of the other backfields to compare Chicago to that I think are notably either worse or right at the same level as the Bears, I think a couple teams stand out right away. First of all, if you want to go off of how PFF had ranked them in their top 32 running back rooms, it said the Bears were 30. The two teams they put below them in their rankings that I would definitely agree with, the Giants and the Dallas Cowboys. The Giants have Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary. They drafted Cam Sketabo, but like that is not a group of proven rushers. Like we've seen Tyrone Tracy have a couple of big games, but he hasn't been like a bell cow 1,000-yard kind of guy. And then like Devin Singletary had so many flashes in Buffalo, but in New York, like never really took that next step. They kind of have been piecemealing it together, and then you hope Cam Sketabo can come in as a fourth-round pick who was great at Arizona State, and we all liked in the draft, but like it feels like you get three 500-yard rushers there and no 1,000-yard rusher. And I'm not sure that running back room is a super talented group that's really going to lead that offense the way that the Giants might want them to. And the Cowboys have been really skimping on the running back position ever since they decided to not pay Ezekiel Elliott. They've they had Rico Dowdle last year, had 1,000 yards for them, but they let him walk to the Carolina Panthers. And of course, they brought back Zeke Elliott on a much cheaper contract late in his career now, and that didn't really produce a ton for them, but they let both of those guys go. And so they brought in Javonte Williams from the Denver Broncos, and then Miles Sanders as a free agent from the Carolina Panthers. And there's a lot to like about Williams, especially who had some big year early, what was his rookie season, I think, in Denver. But like the last 2 years as Denver starter, he had 774 yards and 513 yards. He's averaged less than 4 yards a carry each of the last two seasons. I'm just not convinced that Javonte Williams is going to come to Dallas and all of a sudden be a great workhorse lead back. And Miles Sanders had that one good year with the Eagles a while ago and hasn't really done much of anything since. They drafted Jaden Blue in the 5th round and Phil Maffa in the 7th, but like Cowboys just don't have a lot at running back. And I would take the Bears backfield over those clearly, just like PFF would as well. But I'd throw in, a team like the Cincinnati Bengals to me are right there in this same tier of like bottom of the barrel NFL backfields below what Chicago has. They got Chase Brown and Zach Moss are their two leading rushers. They brought back Samaje Perine this year, but like, man, this is just not a backfield. Chase Brown had 990 yards, but he's not like a game-changing lead back. I mean, I think he's just kind of a volume carrier. You give him the ball 230 times, he'll get you 900 yards. But like, to me, he's just not a real difference maker. And I think somebody like DeAndre Swift, as much as I'm just not a big DeAndre Swift guy, there is more of a home run threat kind of ability there. Who I just feel like Swift had enough of those big plays that you're like, that there's more that you can tap into there. And I just don't feel like Chase Brown has that kind of ability that Swift has shown us before. I'll throw Cleveland into this mix too, only because they're going to be so heavily waiting on rookies there that they drafted Quinshon Judkins from Ohio State in the 2nd round, and then they doubled down and got Dylan Sampson from Tennessee in the 4th round. But Jerome Ford is kind of their bring back starter from last year. And I mean, unless Judkins has a huge breakout rookie season, but I wasn't a huge fan of him coming out of the draft. I think there's some limitations there that I think he'll be a good running back, but I don't know that he's going to come in and get 1,500 yards and emerge as this super great backfield option. So like between those four teams, we already put like four teams, I think, pretty clearly behind the Bears in terms of how much I trust their running back rooms. And then you can throw in teams like the Denver Broncos and the Pittsburgh Steelers and maybe the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I'm not super high on the New Orleans Saints now that Alvin Kamara is in his 30s and they don't have much depth to really like around him. I think there's a lot of teams in this conversation that just aren't that great in the backfield. I mean, it's that simple. I just think DeAndre Swift can be on that same level as guys like Warren from Pittsburgh, or even where Kamara is at this stage of his career, or the Jaguars with ETN and Tank Bigsby. Like ETN's been kind of falling off there, and they need him to bounce back. And Bigsby kind of took some playing time from him, but I don't think he's a special running back either. They drafted Tootin from Virginia Tech this year, but I don't see a DeAndre Swift caliber player in that backfield. Plus, I'm high on the likes of Monangai and Roschon Johnson stepping up and being better than some backups on some other teams. Denver is probably the most borderline here because I do like J.K. Dobbins for them, and then they drafted R.J. Harvey from UCF in the second round. Like I think those two can give them a more potent backfield than what they had last year with Javonte Williams. So there's a couple of these teams are borderline, but I'm still looking at the Bears right in this tier with 8 or 10 other teams that where it's like, yeah, running back's not a strength. These are not going to be top 10 rushing units necessarily in the NFL, right? They're not going to be up there with the Ravens and the Lions with some of these loaded backfields around the NFL, but like they're not that great. And the Bears are not that far behind from where these other teams might be. It doesn't mean there's not room for improvement, but I think when you think about what the potential is for these Chicago Bears running backs, you can see where the ceiling is much higher, and that last year kind of felt like the floor, right? Like I don't think we're going to see DeAndre Swift as a number one running back be worse than what he was last year. I don't think we're going to see Roschon Johnson as a backup running back do less than what we saw last year. And then you add in Kyle Monangai, and like if last year is the floor and that was the 25th ranked rushing attack, you can see where if everything improves this season the way we fully expect it to, excuse me, if everything improves this season the way we fully expect it to, you can pretty clearly see a path towards this Bears running room being not only better, but like good, dare I say, certainly reliable at the very least. Maybe not special, but reliable. And the thing I keep coming away with is like, this is why you hired Ben Johnson. And I want to go through how much the coach and the rest of the offseason is really going to shift the perspective on this next on Locked On Bears. Everyone looked at the Detroit Lions backfield, and Ben Johnson drafted Jahmyr Gibbs in the first round and brought in David Montgomery, and how much Detroit loaded up on running backs. And so we then immediately point to Ben Johnson and say, oh, Ben Johnson must really want to load up on running backs for the Chicago Bears. And I think it's why we were surprised a little bit that they didn't draft one before the 7th round or add any veterans in free agency. But I think this can be sometimes a little bit of like it's not quite correlation causation, but I think there's a different way of looking at this that I think we're kind of missing the forest for the trees a little bit. It's not either of those, but it's like it's in this conversation of there's like a logical mechanism at play here where it's like Ben Johnson and the Lions didn't build the best backfield in the NFL, perhaps because they felt like they really needed to have the most talented running backs in the NFL, but because the ability to do so presented itself and the team was well built enough that they had the luxury to do so. But it's not as though Ben Johnson requires or needs to have the best running backs in the NFL in order to run his offense successfully and have a strong running game. Like there's sort of a directional challenge here that I think that gets overlooked here. Like the Bears hired Ben Johnson for his ability to, of course, develop Caleb Williams and work the offense as a whole, but like he's a running game based offensive coordinator first and foremost, and you build the passing game off of that. Like his appeal, or a big part of his appeal as a head coach, is how he's going to scheme the running game, right? It's not, his appeal as a head coach isn't he had Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. Like you didn't hire Ben Johnson for Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. Those are the players. Like I realize this is sort of obvious, but like Ben Johnson's skill is separate from the talent they had in the backfield there. And the talent they have in the backfield there is what helped them have perhaps the best rushing attack in football and helps them win 15 games. And of course, like that's all good and a big part of this, right? But it's not as though Ben Johnson can't have success without running backs like Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. He has had success with them. And it's not as though Ben Johnson can't have success with DeAndre Swift, because he has had success literally with the running back in the Chicago Bears backfield already. Like I know he traded him away and et cetera, replaced him, but like there's literal precedent here for Ben Johnson being able to get production out of DeAndre Swift. Not number one running back production at the time, but it was different stage of both of their careers and different backfield, different situations. But like we've seen Ben Johnson in Detroit go from Williams and Swift, and then they bring in Gibbs and they bring in Montgomery. Like they have transitioned across multiple running backs and styles of running backs across multiple seasons with Ben Johnson at the helm running this backfield. And they've been able to be a consistently strong running team, not regardless of who the running back is, but like across a variety of different sets of running backs. You can go from Jamal Williams being the number one back with 1,000 yards and NFL leading 17 touchdowns, and then you can bring in somebody like David Montgomery and have him be the starter, and he goes for 1,000 yards with Jahmyr Gibbs as a rookie spelling him, but then Jahmyr Gibbs can take over as the number one running back with Montgomery kind of behind him, and you can have success. Ben Johnson has had success with different styles, different orders, different varieties of running backs because he's had good offensive lines. He knows how to scheme a running game, how to sequence play calling to build off of each other, to run play action and a passing game off of that. And then when the passing game has success, it can make the running game easier. And like all of this is to say, like, you didn't bring in Ben Johnson to Chicago so that you would then also need to upgrade the running back room drastically, right? Bringing in Ben Johnson was going to allow you to not need to upgrade the running back room drastically because coaching and play calling and scheming can elevate this group alone without needing to add more. And again, like the Lions added a running back, of course, like even when they had 1,000 yards from Jamal Williams and then David Montgomery had 1,000 yards, like they still grabbed Jahmyr Gibbs, right? Like it's not as though Ben Johnson doesn't want better running backs, but it doesn't have to be a priority for Ben Johnson. The Bears decided, hey, this running back group is good enough for Ben Johnson to work with, especially when you go out and make the offensive line the priority, right? When they go out and trade for Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson and sign Drew Dahlman in the free agency, that was your running game upgrade. The running game upgrade this offseason was not about adding to the backfield. It was about improving the offensive line. So when you add in the improved offensive line plus a play caller who has had consistent success across a variety of types of running backs in the running game, that's what's going to make this Bears backfield better and not the worst backfield in football. Now, I don't know that makes them a top 10 rushing offense in 2025. That's probably a little bit too rich, but like we should fully expect DeAndre Swift, assuming he's healthy and plays, full season or whatever, be 1,000-yard running back again. Dare I say easily? I mean, he's going to be more efficient, more effective, and back over 1,000 yards. We should expect the combination of Roschon Johnson and Kyle Monangai to be a really solid spell to Swift, a good backup combination. It's hard to put a number of yards on both of them because we'll see exactly what the splits are in terms of carries and pass catching opportunities, but like those guys can combine for a good, 600-700 yards in the backfield. I mean, that doesn't seem out of the question at all for Chicago to get up. And then you add in Caleb Williams' rushing yards and everything else to be a team that could rush for 2,000 yards as a team, right? Not any individual running back, but as a team, get you up over 2,000 yards, which is not even like that much. 2,000 yards last season would have ranked you 13th in the NFL. It's not that crazy high of a bar. Even to get up to 1,800 yards would put you at 20th. Like that feels all pretty within reach, because the Bears last year were at 1734. Again, they were 25th in rushing last season. Ben Johnson's going to make them better. They're going to jump up into that top 20, likely into that top 15, just purely without upgrading the running back room much at all from everything else they've done around it. Like, this is like half of the point of hiring Ben Johnson, was to make your running game better without needing to add running backs. Because if Ben Johnson can only be a good run game coordinator with elite running backs, then you might not be that great a run game coordinator. And that's not the case for Ben Johnson, right? Of course, a lot of coaches can have a successful running game with running backs like Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, both in their backfield. Obviously, I think Ben Johnson is able to take that and maximize that in a way that other coaches might not. But of course, like, you give most NFL coaches some good running backs, they're going to be good. But part of why you hired Ben Johnson is that you trust that he can be good even when your running backs aren't ideal. And you know what? If the opportunity presents itself to upgrade your running back room in a way that is smart and affordable and team friendly and all that stuff, they absolutely will do so, right? There's not like this hubris of like, oh, we can make any running back work, so we don't need to upgrade that room. Like, the Lions used the first round pick on one. Like, Ben Johnson's on board with adding more at running back, but it's about opportunity and team building, and there's more to decide than just, should we trade for X player? Should we sign X free agent? Because you got to think about what the alternatives are in terms of who else you could sign, who else you could trade for, who else you could draft, and make the best team-wide decision. And this offseason, that meant not drafting a running back early. That meant not signing a free agent running back early, because you had other fish to fry. You needed to upgrade the offensive line. You needed to upgrade the pass rush. You needed to get playmakers in this offense. And there weren't running backs that were best player available in the draft. And it just didn't work out that way for the Bears. And they'll be okay. The running back room is going to be fine. The Bears should be able to run the ball effectively enough for the offense to succeed. And then maybe next offseason you can make a big splash at running back or whatever you want to do, but like, they'll be fine. The offense, assuming the current running backs stay healthy, this running back room will be just fine. Maybe the Bears will still go out and add a veteran backup. I mean, the aforementioned Jamal Williams is still a free agent, so maybe they want some more veteran depth, but I keep insisting on this podcast, they're not going to make the splash trade for Kenneth Walker. They're not going to make the splash trade for Breece Hall or James Cooks. Like, I think they're going to take the slow and steady approach here in the backfield, and I don't think we're going to see much of a negative consequence from that this upcoming season. If they make any changes to the roster, you can be sure we'll break it down for you right here on the Locked On Bears podcast. So make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, because that's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our Chicago Bears news and analysis. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we're not quite every day this time of year in our slow season, but we'll be ramping back up to a full 5 days a week in the lead up to Bears training camp to make sure we're ready for when the team gets back to House Hall and really starts practicing for real. So that's why you got to get subscribed, stay subscribed, like, rate, review, leave comments, all the good stuff. And in exchange, I hope that tuning into Locked On Bears helps make it just a little bit easier for you to bear down.